One. Hey guys, what's going on? It's your man Nathan. It's Friday, so you know what that means. It's time for another episode of No Label Live. And if you're joining for the first time, No Label Live is all about uncovering the labels that we use to identify who we are. Because sometimes in life, the labels stand in our way, and sometimes they propel us forward. And we want to uncover what makes people propel forward. And today I am blessed to have a good friend, an entrepreneur, a co-founder, and she gets the party rocking, Stenger, who is the co-founder of Soiree Provisions, a party in a box company, and DJ Genesis. So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So my first question is, in your own words, who is Jenna Stenger?
Let's see. Wow. Jenna Stenger is a very multifaceted businesswoman. I like you said, I'm a co-founder of a party in a box company that really launched in June of 2018. I've been doing that with my best and oldest friend, which has been wonderful, and getting to flex my entrepreneurial skills. I'm also a DJ on the weekends here in Washington, D.C. I'm also a corporate businesswoman. I work for Cisco as a sales enablement engineer, and I'm also a leadership coach through Next Level Trainings, which is really how we met. So kind of wear a lot of hats, and I like that because I get to grow in different ways in all of those different kind of platforms.
Okay, yeah, you've got a lot going on. And what do you think, with all of those things that you do, what do you think are some of the labels that you've faced, whether it's being a female entrepreneur, a young leadership coach? I don't know much about the DJ world, but I'm sure there's some labels there as well. So what are some of those labels you faced?
Yeah, it's definitely, female entrepreneur, female DJ. I get girl DJ a lot when people like stumble into the bar, they're like, oh my God, it's a girl DJ. And, I get a lot of stuff also for being young in coaching and, in my, well, not really my current role at Cisco, but in at a previous company in the same realm, for being young and working with men who are CEOs of their service provider companies. And they're like, oh, I have kids your age. And I'm like, let's talk business, I definitely get those labels. And I think something that you said right from the get-go is that it's, how labels can hold you back and how they can propel you. And I've really tried to, because mine's typically young or female, right? A lot heavily female, just because I work in a lot of male dominant industries, not the party in a box per se, but even being an entrepreneur, it's like, how do I, really allow, let's take DJing, for example, the fact that I'm a female DJ, I'm not going to lie, it's gotten my foot in the door with a few places, but the reason they kept me was because I was a good DJ. It doesn't matter how cute you are, at the end of the day, or how different you might be visually. It's, my job is to make people have a good time and make them dance and enjoy themselves. And, I do a good job of that. That's why I've had the same, residency for, over, almost 3 years now. So, yeah, that's something that's really, I will, say, hey, I'm a female DJ, but at the same time, there's a certain point where it got kind of old, people coming in and, being like, oh my gosh, when's the DJ coming on? When's the real DJ? Did he go to the bathroom? Or if I have like one of the like bouncers will stand near me so people don't continue to approach, and they come over with their drinks shaking over my very nice equipment, and they'll go to the bouncer and be like, hey, can you play this song next? Like when you're done letting her just like mess around or whatever she's doing. So it's really interesting. I definitely get that a lot. Like people are surprised. And then within that, they kind of expect a certain kind of persona, like I remember one night I was wearing, a pink shirt. It was still kind of an edgy look, which I try to go for when I'm DJing, but I was wearing a pink shirt. And this one guy just could not get over the fact that I was a female DJ and I was wearing pink. He's like, I'm not comprehending. And I'm like, it's kind of once they get used to that label, like, okay, we've got a female DJ, they still expect like a certain stereotype to, walk behind the booth. So, that's something I've experienced a lot with DJing. And in my party in a box business, and like being an entrepreneur right out the gate, when I started telling people like, hey, I started a business, and I would tell other men about this, and they were kind of like, oh, sounds cute. Like this is just some little hobby I'm doing on the side. And I'm like, no, this is something that, I'm trying to make a profit from. Like I'm investing a lot of time, money, and effort into, and I'm, working with resellers and things like that, like trying to get those channels going. This isn't just something I do just for fun on the side, so that's also a big thing, is having men really take something seriously that sometimes if they can't personally comprehend how they would use that product themselves, because it obviously is targeted towards a female demographic, it's still like, this is a real business, not just a hobby. So those are probably, when it comes to the female, label, those are probably the ways those come up the most. But also even being a female entrepreneur, I love that I'm a female entrepreneur, because I think being female means being very powerful in a totally different way than male entrepreneurs. And so I love like the community that has grown amongst female entrepreneurs, and how many connections and networking you can do just through that. And it's become like female entrepreneur is almost like a safe haven kind of community to connect with other like-minded women, and really just support each other in accomplishing whatever the next big goal is. So
what does that definition of power represent to you? You said it represents a sense of power. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, I think in the business world, I would venture to say that, being female and being, at the top of the food chain in that company or whatnot, historically, I think it's just as our society, it's been, female can be kind of weak. Like you can't handle, making tough decisions, or handling all the different personalities, or really being, the boss. And, or you're, considered not a very nice B word if you're, if you show up powerfully. And so now I think we've kind of taken that back a little bit, through our own empowerment, which is a big vision of mine, is to like empower other women. And I love that there's just this huge wave of that going on, in our society today. And I think really what being powerful, like how being female is powerful when it comes to being in the workplace, is I think that we're able to look at things with a different perspective than a lot of men can. A lot of men have been conditioned to like step away from their emotions. And although, business is business, I still think that every business decision has emotion in it. I mean, I'm in sales, and they say, I don't know what the exact statistic is, but it's like almost 80%, I want to say, of the sale comes down to emotion. And so when you're very emotionally intelligent as women, and you have that female intuition and all of those things, like it just is a huge power play in the business world that's, I think, been really underlooked for a long time.
Yeah, that made me think. So I was at TEDx here in Charleston yesterday, and somebody was asking me about one of the speakers and if I related to the speaker. And they were talking about a topic that they were talking about racism, and how do you connect where everybody has a vested interest in racism, because you could feel the pain and the hurt coming from the speaker's voice. And what I said was, I think that in order to make a change in any situation, right now we're talking about business, I think it ultimately does come down to connecting on an emotional level and creating that emotion that even though I haven't experienced that exact situation, there's something in my life I can relate to what you are talking to me about right now. So I think emotion is super important in any aspect of life.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And that's, actually a conversation I've had with different men in my life, be it friends or partners or even family, about like, hey, I think women's issues have historically been kind of brushed under the rug as just like, oh, that's their thing, when it's, more than half of the planet's thing. And it shows up in, it's like, I think one of the biggest things I try to encourage men to do is support not only the women in business around you, but your sisters, your partners, your mothers, your friends, because, it's really nice to know that, let's say you're going to the Women's March, that your best guy friend or your boyfriend or whomever is going to be there next to your side, because, women's issues are people issues. And I think when you look at things like racism, and like, I think disease related like labels and things like that, it's like, this isn't just like their issue, it's everybody's issue. And it's how do we really come together to, maybe we can't 100% understand because we haven't been through it ourselves, that whatever that label is per se.
Yeah.
But how do we act as an ally, and how do we relate to it the best that we can to, create progress, and to create, progress that's really based in love. And I think that's where, we can really be really powerful, and really get things done the right way.
Man, yeah. So saying that you may not be going through the label, it made me think that I think people get caught up in that. So, like, use myself as an example. Like, you don't have cerebral palsy, but if I approach it with the thought that you don't have it, so you'll never understand, and I verbalize that, then I've completely lost
Mm-hmm.
you as somebody who's going to be open to listening. I think when we just automatically say, well, you're not me, so you won't understand.
Yeah, that's so true. It's like, how do you create more of a bridge there than like a wall of
Yeah.
of differences? It's like acknowledging the differences, but then being like, hey, how can we come together to really create a sense of understanding? And within that, I think a sense of like allyship. I think that's the biggest thing is, I think especially for, I think, as time has come, I don't think it's totally there, but I think for women, we're really like, we've got, excuse the sirens going by. Um, this is a state of emergency.
Yeah.
um, no, as women, I think, I think that even within women, there's like different segments. There's women of color, and there's women who, have disease related illnesses. And it's like, or I'm sorry, disease related labels, I should say. And so it's like, how do those like well, they're not even really sub, but like there's, being a woman, and then maybe a woman of color, being
Yeah.
a person of color, and then a woman. It's like, how do you really stand up for the other like people in your, let's say, label that we're talking about, who have those other, differences than you, and those other labels that they are, living with. So I think that's something too. It's like, I think it's just how can we relate and try to understand one another as best as possible.
So I want to kind of go in a different direction a little bit. So you've talked about what you're kind of up to now and what you're creating. How does that differ from when you were a young girl navigating the world and the labels you felt as a young girl from now?
I there was a lot. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, in a part of town that is very kind of conservative and traditional. And I think the first time I really experienced my first label was being called a tomboy. And I was, I rode horses, and I, wasn't really into any of the girly things. I played outside pretending to be Indiana Jones with my dogs. And I remember the biggest time was actually, I signed up to play football on an all boys team. I went to a Catholic grade school, so it was really conservative.
Mm-hmm.
And so my stepmom at the time, she went to go sign me. You have to go to the school and write down your kid's name on the little sheet, and you run into other parents. And she was like, oh, she ran into like a dad or something, was like, oh, your son's playing. How old is he? And she was like, 10, and just kind of, left. And she told me when I got home. And I remember that summer actually being really, really upset with her, because she was putting me through like training before the football training started. Like, she was having me run with books in my backpack around the neighborhood. And like,
Oh, wow.
she had me working out. And in retrospect, or in hindsight, I realized she was trying to prepare me for a playing field that maybe I wasn't totally prepared for as like a young 10-year-old girl. And luckily, bodies are kind of similar at that age, so it's not too much of a difference. But my dad, like when we went to go buy my, like my football gear, he, I remember he had this, and he's just like, my dad's the best. He does his best when it comes to these female things. But he goes to the like equipment guy, and he goes, I'm worried that something could happen on this side, and I don't know if she needs like special protection or something. And I was like, Dad, I'm 10. I don't have that side yet. So like, and then I was like, it's not going to stunt her growth. She'll be okay. And it was just so cute because he was trying to navigate that. And so, that whole year, I only played for 1 year, and it was a lot of, for me, I'm really just glad I went out there and did it. I wasn't exceptionally good. I was really fast, and I was afraid to tackle, and yeah, I was definitely feeling like an outsider on the team. There was a couple of the boys that would be nice to me, but for the most part, I kind of just stuck to my own. I was a really quiet kid. And I remember my last, one of the most like defining moments for me as like in this whole experience and this whole label, I think I was afraid of my own power. Not physically, but a little bit of that, but like I was afraid to like really just go for it because I was afraid of what they would say. And so I remember our last practice, we would do these things where we would run around the field, and it was like 4 baseball fields with a football field in the middle. So it was massive. We call them canyons. And so we did those, and there would always be like the same, like, 5 kids in the front, and the other, I don't even know, 30 or something behind them. And I remember that last practice, I was like I was in 3rd place at the finish line. And I just remember the coaches looking at me like, this girl's got legs, and where was that the whole season? And it's like, how can you, even in like being in their position, how can you really look introspectively at the young women, that you may be a mentor to, whether it's your daughter or your coach or a teacher or whatever. And it's like, how can you really bring out and empower them in a way that's super defining for them? That was a choice that I decided to make and say, hey, I'm going to go for it. It's my last practice. Let's just do it. But imagine where I would have been that whole season if I'd been showing up that way. So that was a really defining moment for me as a young woman, a 10-year-old girl. It took a lot of courage, but yeah, a lot of lessons learned from that. I would never change anything about that.
Yeah, I lived in high school locker rooms my whole life. So yeah, I can imagine that. A lot of courage for sure. So we've got a little bit of time left, and I want to actually use that as my next question. So if there's some young girl who's watching right now, what piece of advice would you give them that's going to hopefully leave them feeling more empowered and able to show their power without worrying about judgment from other people?
Hmm. I would say live your authentic best self unapologetically. Don't don't apologize for who you are, or who you want to be or where you're going. Just live your authentic self, and I think that's going to just fill your cup up and empower you. And that's the most important tool to get you to wherever it is you want to be.
Beautiful. Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, so they can connect with me on social media on Instagram. My handle is at the DJ Genesis, and it's Genesis with a J, so the DJ Jenesis. Or you can visit my business at Soiree Provisions, Soiree Provisions. That's also on Instagram or Facebook. Yeah, reach out. Love to chat. I'm going to be starting my own podcast here shortly, so can't wait to have you on, Nathan, to kick it off.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
About that coming up on my Instagram, so follow me there.
Okay, we'll make sure and drop all that stuff in the notes for the show, so don't worry about trying to find it. It will be right there for you. And so the final question that I ask everybody is, what does no label defines me mean to you?
What no label defines me means to me. Let's see. I think it means, in all of my different, multifaceted areas I'm working in, I think it means I'm powerful and qualified for who I am, not because I'm not a woman, or because of my age.
You're powerful and qualified for just who you are as a person.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Although being a woman makes it even better.
Yeah, right. That's a good thing about labels. So labels can mean whatever definition you actually give to them.
Yeah, absolutely. You can choose to be empowered or disempowered by them. So.
Yeah, 100%. And before we hop off, is there anything you would like to leave the audience with that we didn't touch on today?
No, I think we touched on it all, and I'm so happy to have been here and chatted with you and feel blessed and grateful. So thanks, Nathan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to acknowledge you for coming on and sharing as authentically as you did. I know that this is going to reach the person that it was meant to reach, and it's going to create a difference for them. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to share as honest and open as you did.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nathan. I really appreciate the opportunity to do so.
And with that being said, we will join you, the audience, again next Friday for another episode of No Label Live. If you know someone who needs to see this show, make sure and share it out so that they can get the benefit from all of the great knowledge, all the great experience that was shared here today. Make sure and like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and like the Facebook so you can stay up to date with everything going on. And remember, if you're watching this, you're up to big things. And when you're up to big things, you must be patient, you must be diligent. And remember, friends, you must never, never quit.